Welcome to After Party, everyone. Thank you so much for being here with us. Mark Halperin is tonight's guest, so as you can imagine, we'll be digging into politics, new polls. He might be able to help us solve the case of missing Mitch McConnell. I don't know. I'm not sure anybody can crack that case at the moment, but we're going to be getting into it. Also, new updates from New Jersey, where some 400 people improperly voted. This comes about a week after Donald Trump's primetime address to the country, and CNN is reacting poorly, to say the least. Sophie Cunningham of the United Fever made a really major statement, getting basically glossed over by much of the corporate press, but a really major statement in support of women's sports. Believe it or not, she actually, it's a kind of a milestone. So we're going to get into all of that. I have some original reporting to do right off the bat here, a bit of a media story. Please do subscribe. If you haven't subscribed yet, subscribing on YouTube really is the best way to help us do the independent journalism that we do here. So just go ahead, click that subscribe button, like, comment. It's all very helpful. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Of course, we do a show 3 days a week. You might not know that unless you subscribe on the podcast feed. We drop a Friday episode. They're often my favorite episodes. I just go back and forth with you all via the emails you send in to emily@devilmaycaremedia.com. And really, we touch on anything and everything under the sun. I read the emails live to tape. It's not a live show, but I read your emails live to tape. That way, you know, basically I'm reacting in the moment. You can often tell I'm reacting in the moment. At least hopefully you can tell I'm reacting in the moment, because sometimes your questions catch me off guard, to say the very least. All right, before we bring in Mark Halperin tonight, we have a story I wanted to bring you from inside of the New York Times. You may remember some of the controversy that's dogged Nicholas Kristof, one of the top columnists at the New York Times for many years. And lately, he's come under some serious skepticism for a couple of different reasons, but we're going to focus on one. We have some new reporting tonight on Kristof, the New York Times, Bill Gates, and even, believe it or not, Jeffrey Epstein, because the Epstein saga continues as we expected and predicted that it would here long into the future. It's continuing tonight. And just to set the table a little bit, the Epstein saga today had a couple of new updates. It's creating headaches for the people with whom Jeffrey Epstein associated still. Now, Bill Gates is very much included in that group of people who cannot escape the ongoing headache, nor should they. Earlier today, the Associated Press reported that an external review from the Gates Foundation, they commissioned an external review. It found that Bill Gates and his team persistently met with Jeffrey Epstein long after his initial Florida incarceration, apparently, quote, more than 24 times, and, quote, even as employees expressed concerns about the reputational risk of working with him. We could probably pop the AP headline up on the screen. Here's more from them. Quote, the conversations appear to focus on a public health fund that never materialized and a grant to the International Peace Institute, which was run by an associate of Epstein. The roughly 30 meetings, the AP continues, which took place from 2011 to 2014, included Gates Foundation, included several visits to Epstein's Manhattan townhouse. And I'll just pause there to say, one visit to Jeffrey Epstein's Manhattan townhouse should have been enough for anybody, no matter how badly they wanted his money. We have pictures from inside that townhouse. It is incredibly creepy. When you walked in the foyer, there was that awful piece of art dangling from the ceiling of what looks like a bride. But no, the Gates Foundation kept going back, continuing to try to get money in a law firm. Review was done by the law firm Wilmer Hale. They found, quote, no evidence the foundation paid Epstein or did anything illegal. The foundation released a 3-page summary of Wilmer Hale's report Tuesday and did not say if it would release the full version. It's also worth noting that Daniel Siad, he's a modeling scout who went viral for all of the wrong reasons back in June when he sweated his way through this just disastrous, brutal CNN interview. You may have seen it at the time. They were grilling him over extensive ties to Epstein that he maintained over many, many years. He was just found dead outside of Paris, and he was under investigation by French authorities. But let's return now to Nicholas Kristof. Kristof, again, celebrated New York Times columnist. You may remember how he came under significant fire back in May for a column on Israeli prisons. He was already facing that scrutiny from his own employer when in mid-June, Semafor's Max Tani made matters worse for Kristof. Tani, of course, has been on the show. he noticed that despite Kristof pledging during his Oregon gubernatorial run, he ran as a Democrat for governor of Oregon back in 2022, he said he would avoid writing about donors or disclosing that he'd given him cash if he did mention him. But what Tani found is that hadn't happened in many cases. I'm quoting here from his article in Semafor, which you can see up on the screen. Quote, in a series of pieces between 2022 and 2025, Kristof wrote favorably about who? Bill Gates and what? His nonprofit. In one case, he touted Gates' plan for fighting global hunger. In others, he cited statistics from Gates' foundation, as well as his predictions on gene editing, interesting, and his recommendation of an author. Kristof made no mention of the fact that Bill and Melinda French Gates had donated a combined $100,000 to his campaign for governor. That's not chump change in a gubernatorial election, but it wasn't just Gates. Max pointed out that Kristof mentioned several other donors without the Times adding any disclosures. So after that report, the Times sent the press 9 Kristof stories that had since been updated to include disclosures. I'm reading from my notes here because I want to make sure everything is absolutely precise as we report this story out. So for example, one piece that quoted a foreign policy expert was appended with a note that read, quote, this column failed to disclose that Deborah Filks donated to Nicholas Kristof's campaign for governor of Oregon in 2021. That is reflective of what the rest of the notes looked like. And again, the Times sent out about 9 of those examples that had been updated. Every instance of a failed disclosure pointed out by Tani included an editorial note at the end of the column, with the exceptions of Kristof's mentions of Bill Gates or the Gates Foundation. Isn't that interesting? Kristof wrote a whole column back in February about Epstein and child sex trafficking. So I'm going to read from that now. He said, I've been speaking in the past few days with survivors of sex trafficking and those who work with them, and they're thrilled that the Epstein files are bringing more attention to trafficking. Now, Kristof has reported a lot on trafficking over the years. He adds, but they're also frustrated that the focus has been tightly on Epstein and his circle and not on the victims or on the way we as a society enable the abuse. We rightly condemn powerful associates of Epstein's for their indifference to young girls being sexually assaulted, but collectively we show the same indifference in a way that I fear leaves us complicit. Now, even more interesting, the Times told Fox News that their internal review of his columns was complete. That was just like a week ago. So they can't possibly have missed the Gates columns because those were basically the first ones that Tani mentioned in the Semafor report that initially seemed to at least initiate this review. So I reached out to Kristof and the New York Times twice in the last 24 hours asking them for comment on this, and they never responded. Now, Gates' Epstein ties are among the most suspicious and egregious across all the files. Many of you probably already know this. All the way back in 2023, we knew, according to a Wall Street Journal report, that Gates believed Epstein tried to blackmail him over an affair. And you may remember back in February, Ryan Grimm, Maz Hussein, and I reported over at DropSite that Gates' top aide, Boris Nikolic, he was the top science aide to Bill Gates, agreed to help Epstein get in touch with the NSA for gene hacking purposes. We wrote then, quote, in late 2012, Epstein had sent the same request to Boris Nikolic, Bill Gates' top aide. Do you have any contacts at NSA so we can use the encryption in biological systems? Yes, Nikolic replied, there are so many places where I do not have, or there are not many places where I do not have someone, winky face emoji. Nikolic was asking Epstein to protect him inside Russia. Epstein suggested the former Norwegian prime minister help arrange a meeting for him with Putin by describing Epstein as a Gates advisor. Epstein was helping link up Ehud Barak, former Israeli prime minister, with the Gates Foundation and, quote, shepherding the Gates Foundation in their efforts in the Ivory Coast. So you probably remember one of the most salacious emails from the entire Epstein file document dump in the last year, as NPR reported at the time, quote, in emails, Epstein wrote that Bill Gates had come to him to facilitate trysts with married women and to get medication to treat an STI from sex with Russian girls. That was a quote from the email draft. Epstein also claimed that Bill Gates wanted to try to give that STI medication to Melinda French Gates in secret. To wrap it all up here, Nick Kristof is a Pulitzer Prize winner. He has covered child trafficking. He has updated every column that reportedly mentioned a donor except Bill Gates. And now he and the New York Times will not say why. We'll be sure to keep you updated here if I hear back from the New York Times with any more information about this obviously bizarre lapse in what they said would be their procedures. What Kristof said would be his procedures, his editorial policies. This has yet to happen. And again, that Semafor report initially included all kinds of other mentions. Those were made to be updated. Those other mentions have been updated in Kristof's columns. Gates remains. So we will continue to keep you posted on the story. I'm going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with Mark Halperin. Everybody's talking about weight loss injections because the results are just so dramatic. Those work by lowering blood sugar and then reducing appetite. So what if you're looking to lose weight but not interested in painful weekly injections, especially when you hear about some of those intense side effects? That's why doctors created a weight loss supplement called Lean, and the results are remarkable. The studied ingredients in Lean have been shown to lower your blood sugar, burn fat by converting it into energy, and curb your appetite and cravings so you're not as hungry. But listen, Lean is not for the casual dieter with only a few pounds to lose. The doctors at Brickhouse Nutrition created Lean for frustrated dieters with 10 or more pounds to lose. Let's get you started with 20% off and free rush shipping so you can add Lean to your healthy diet and exercise plan. Visit takelean.com and enter Emily for your discount. That's promo code Emily at takelean.com. All right, we are back now with Mark Halperin, of course, of Next Up and Two Way. Mark, thanks so much for being here.
Emily, I'm very happy to be here, although your producer sent me an insulting note. It said, this show's supposed to be fun, as if every show I'm on is not just fun au naturel. But I'll do my best to be fun, Emily. I'll do my best.
Yes, Mark, remember.
I wrote it on a Post-it. It's right here above the camera. It says, contrary to normal practice, be fun.
We should start actually recommending other guests do that. Just get that Post-it, put it in front of you. You've got the short sleeves. That's a good start.
As soon as the appearance is over, I'll be sending the producers a note that says, pro tip, if you want a fun show, only book fun guests. Don't book guests and then the square peg round hole. Say, normally you're not very fun, but tonight we'd ask you on this particular show, be fun.
You know, Mark, I do think in our defense, we send that to everyone because we could all use a reminder to smile and to laugh. He's going to check. He's going to ask the other guests. He's going to be like, did you get this email? Because that's the reporter in you, Mark Halperin.
Yeah. Now, I'll be as fun as I can be. You know, I can only deal with what God gave me.
Well, let's actually start on a fun note and a kind of dense political block that I wanted to get to here. So we have a lot of new polling coming out. But actually, Edward Norton went on the Ted Danson, I think it's normally with Woody Harrelson, podcast on, it's like Conan O'Brien's YouTube channel. So he started talking about Trump and corruption, comparing Trump corruption to Nixon and McNamara. There's obviously a lot of conversation right now about the Nixon Renaissance happening on the right. Several articles have come out recently about why young conservatives seem to be so attracted to Nixon. But this is interesting. And Mark, you have historical perspective on this, vast historical perspective on this. I'm not saying you're old. I'm saying you're knowledgeable. And so I wanted to get your take on Edward Norton comparing Trump and Nixon on this, or during this conversation with, for some reason, Ted Danson.
I mean, and I could say I think Trump is worse than Nixon and McNamara by far. Trump and Hegseth are they are. You can actually credit Nixon and McNamara with some dimension of competency. Yeah. You know, you may not. Terrible things were going on, and they were corrupt in some ways, and there were lies. We're in a level of incompetency and grift, and corruption that is unprecedented in the history of this country.
Okay, so that was from last month, but I think obviously related to not just the Iran war, probably the reason he's invoking McNamara specifically, kind of random to lump just Nixon and McNamara together. There could be many other names that you would toss into that mix, Mark. But Trump said, obviously, the Iran war, he's not worried about himself. That was just in the last 24 hours. He said, I'm not worried about me. I'll be fine. Lots of people worried about the midterms. These scandals are starting to stack up in a way that I think is sticking in a way it didn't in the first administration. What say you?
Which scandals do you mean? The personal financial stuff?
Yeah, he's referring to the corruption, those sorts of things. The World Liberty Financial.
I have so much to say about this, Emily. Much of it fun.
Let's do it.
First of all, regarding the fact that Woody wasn't there. You know, Woody was in Game Change, the movie HBO movie made about my book. This is not some inside information. Woody is not the most reliable guy in the world. Let's just say that. He likes to smoke, and he marches to the beat of his own drummer. So a few months ago, I heard a promo with Ted Danson announcing the show. And this is why I bring it up. It made me laugh so hard at the time because he said, yeah, the show's with me and Woody. And then he's like, but sometimes Woody won't be here. And I'm like, yeah, Woody won't be there a lot because to tape a podcast, particularly a show like yours that's live, you got to show up on time. And I'm just thinking like every week they're in like the story meeting. It's like, okay, this week we're interviewing Ed Norton. Is Woody going to be there? No, we can't find Woody. We're doing another episode with that Woody. So I think of it as...
He was supposed to be here tonight.
Yeah, exactly. I think of it as a Ted and Woody show, but mostly Ted. If you can find the promo, you should play it. And maybe they'll pull it down because it's hilarious. He's basically like, yeah, it's a show. Woody and I wanted to do it. Cheers, bring the band back together. But a lot of times it'll just be me. Anyway, that's my first thought. Second thought is, in the first Trump term, like if you were around Hollywood types, like if you went to CAA for a meeting, CAA headquarters, they spend $1 million a year on valet parking. I don't know if that's true, but when I used to be represented by CAA, that's what they would say, $1 million. If you're ever around Hollywood types in the first term, there was so much Trump derangement syndrome. And in 2020, same thing. For some reason, what strikes me about this clip is it must all still be going on, but for some reason it's quieter. They're just not as loud as they used to be. So that was like to me like a throwback to what I heard from 2015 to 2020, which is like they don't like anything about Trump. They'll be like, the three worst people of all time are Attila the Hun, Hitler, and Trump's really the worst of the three. That's like the mentality of a lot of Hollywood. Regarding the corruption, Eric Erickson wrote a great piece about this the other day. Eric's a conservative, but he's honest, and he said, this stuff's horrible. And a lot of conservatives, if you say the buck raking, the profit taking, this thing about selling people early access to the Truth Social post, they'll say, well, Hunter Biden. And I say, yes, Hunter Biden. Yes, the Joe Biden's brothers, no question. This is the most buck raking of all time. Might not be illegal, but in terms of dollar amounts and brazenness, we've never seen anything like it. And I've said this before, maybe even to you, so it's not fun to repeat myself, but here I go. Donald Trump's attitude about the presidency and doing things that seem to violate norms is he's a student of history. And he'd say, Lyndon Johnson got rich while he was in the White House. I'm not going to be a sucker and not get rich while I'm in the White House. And by the way, Trump's view is, if this guy made $1 million, I'm going to make $1 trillion because it's the same thing, and I'm not going to be a sucker. If Jack Kennedy is going to make his brother the attorney general, I'm going to make some friend of mine attorney. I'll make my own lawyer attorney general. Bobby Kennedy is more independent than my own lawyer. So it's not surprising to me Trump's doing it. What's surprising is you have some people on the right saying this is unseemly. And I bet you this, whoever the next Republican president is will not do this.
I would definitely take that bet.
Yeah.
All right, well, Fox News has new forecasts out. They made new projections, and they're now projecting the U.S. Senate is a toss-up, which, Mark, I wanted to get your take on this just while we stick on the Senate. This is their power rankings that they unveiled yesterday.
Yeah.
They've got Ohio in it. They have, obviously, Iowa, which is shaping up to be fascinating. Of course, Maine and then Alaska. But looking like North Carolina is actually going to be blue. We'll see what happens in that race. But actually, about a year ago, this is particularly what I'm curious for your take on. If you were discussing the Senate with Republican operatives, they felt pretty bullish. They felt pretty damn good. And actually, Fox News' power rankings also now has the House with an advantage for Democrats, like 16 toss-ups, but Democrats with a margin of 3, not including those toss-ups. So a slim margin, but a margin nonetheless. And Republicans with the redistricting fight have felt very bullish on the House recently too, but especially like a year ago. If you were at Capitol Hill Club, you're talking to anybody, or I guess if you're on the Senate side, and you were talking to Republican operatives, they were like, yep, that's it's the Senate we're feeling good about. And now a year later, it's looking kind of bleak.
Compared to a year ago, and I have no memory, but about a year ago, the Senate looks better for Democrats today than it did a year ago, and the House looks worse. in part because of redistricting and the gains that Republicans made there. A net gain of maybe 8 to 10 seats, and that's the difference between Republicans having no chance to keep control of the House and having a chance, not a great one. The base case, however, I believe, is the same now as it was a year ago. The base case is Republicans keep the Senate and they lose the House. That was true a year ago. It's true now. But as I said, I think that the Democrat chances have gotten better in the Senate. The Fox map is interesting. I think there's a couple question marks that we need answered, and we'll have answers in the next few weeks that will clarify 2 of the 10 or so competitive races. One is this Troy Jackson. He wins the nomination in Maine on Saturday. He officially coronated. Let's see. I predict that right after that we'll know a lot, because I think there's going to be some more opposition research coming that's being held back until he's officially the nominee. Let's see how he handles things. Let's see if he can go toe to toe with Susan Collins, who's a fierce competitor. And then the other is the Michigan Democratic Senate primary, where you've got a Democratic socialist running against a more establishment candidate. Let's see who the nominee is there in a couple weeks after their primary, the first week of August. After those 2 things happen, I think the map will clarify a little bit, but it's still tough for Democrats. It's either they have to draw it to an inside straight, or they have to draw it to a double inside straight as of now.
So on that point, also interesting results here from a recent University of New Hampshire poll of New Hampshire Democrats. And what that found, I'm curious for your take on how this trend might explain Senate and House trends as well. There's a lot to discuss, but we can put this up on the screen. The Interactive Polls account on X compared the University of New Hampshire's polling from 2025, October 2025, February 2026, and July 2026. And they found Gavin Newsom has taken a massive hit. In October 2025, his favorability was at 58 New Hampshire Democrats, then it dipped to 53 in February, and now in July, it's all the way down at 38. We'll get to this in a moment. AOC is surging, on the other hand, amidst this wave of Democratic Socialists of America victories. But what's interesting is, I guess that could possibly also be the thing that cost them the Senate. Every Democrat is then being tied to the DSA candidates, having to answer for DSA adjacent candidates, maybe for Abdul El-Sayed if he ends up winning in Michigan on August 4th. But sticking on Newsom for just a moment, this is after he has made a full court press to establish himself as the premier warrior against MAGA. Now, it's just New Hampshire, and it's just one poll, Mark. What do you make of it?
Well, it's just New Hampshire, just one poll in terms of this favorability number, but the trend line of his standing in the polls in general, both the horse race numbers nationally, et cetera, and his favorable, they've all gone down. The trend is unmistakable. I think there's 3 reasons for it. Number one is when he was riding high, he was fighting Trump on redistricting. He was fighting Trump on immigration. For whatever reason, he hasn't been cast himself as the hero in a movie where Trump's the villain. And I think that's caused people to feel less favorable about him. Number 2 is, I won't say he peaked too early, but when the focus was on that, it was less on what a lot of the focus is on now. People think he's a phony. People are worried about his record in California. Liberals think he's too moderate. Moderates think he's too liberal. So I think the vacuum where he hasn't been the hero has been filled by some of that less attractive stuff. And then finally is it's a real problem to run from California. I've said this before. If you're based in California, the time difference and the travel requirements, it just makes it very difficult to be in people's faces in a positive way, to be present in things. So when he wants to go to South Carolina or New Hampshire, it's like a 3-day trip to do a 1 day of activity. And I think he's just been absent for a while. And all that's led to just a drop. Also, a lot of people think he's a phony. I don't know if you know that, but that's probably played a role as well.
Well, but that's interesting because he's been out there. He launches his podcast around this time last year, if I'm remembering correctly. He launches his podcast.
Wasn't it longer ago than that?
It might have been. Who knows? Time is a flat circle.
Well, Charlie Kirk was a guest on his show.
I want to say that was like last May or June.
Yeah.
Somewhere around there.
Yeah, but I mean, it would be longer than a year.
Yeah, here, let me look up.
Is that the kind of thing you can look up?
Oh, of course.
Start date Charlie Kirk podcast.
So March of 2025.
Okay, there you go.
Is when it launched.
Okay, there you go.
So we fact checked that in real time. But anyway, so he launches a podcast. He goes on this full court press. Like when the Trump administration, he's the one who announced that the DOJ was looking at his wife's nonprofits. He's the one who came out and went super aggressive on that, super aggressive on social media with trolling Trump. And it is popular on social media with the left. Apparently that's not translating in New Hampshire.
Yeah. New Hampshire voters also like attention. And he hasn't been there. Now, on the other hand, Rahm Emanuel did like a 3-day bike trip to New Hampshire, and you know where he is in that same poll? Same number that both you and I have in that New Hampshire poll.
That
0.
Makes sense. That makes sense.
And you and I didn't do a 3-day bike trip across the Granite State, and yet we were tied with Rahm.
Nor has he been a governor of one of the largest economies in the world.
6th or 7th, depending on the day.
Yeah, the odds are certainly stacked against Rahm Emanuel historically. Well, let's talk now about the AOC numbers. I went back. First of all, I did verify that change for Gavin Newsom among all of the recent New Hampshire polls that were cited there. And then while I was doing that, I went and looked at where AOC had gone. So she actually now is neck and neck with Pete Buttigieg for New Hampshire Democrats' preferred candidate. But her figures were 66 favorable in October 2025, 63 favorable in February 2026, and now they're 64-9. Oh yeah, I missed. This is supposed to say July 2026. All right, my mistake. But anyway, pretty stable on her end, and yet that's been enough for her to jump into that second place position as the preferred candidate among New Hampshire Democrats. Yeah. What is that, Mark? Is that it can't be her Munich Security Conference appearance?
Well, unless they've got a great sense of humor, it's not the Munich Security Conference. You know, counter to what I said seconds ago, she's not been to New Hampshire. So that's not it. Here's my theory. There's a huge Bernie vote in New Hampshire. There's a huge progressive vote. I believe Bernie's going to get in, and once he signals he's going to get in, his numbers will go way up. He's not doing well in this poll because people don't think he's going to run. But I believe
think he's going to run.
I do. I think that she's got basically a lot of the Bernie vote because the progressive vote is 35%, I think, of the electorate there, and they got nowhere to go. They basically have 3 places to go: Bernie, who people don't believe is going to run; Ro Khanna, who is no AOC, and AOC. So I think the vote is parked there with her. I don't think she will run, and if she doesn't run, that vote's going to need to go somewhere. And if Bernie and she both don't run, I think Ro Khanna may have a chance to get some of that vote because those progressives are not interested in Gavin Newsom. They're not interested in Kamala Harris. There's a report that Kamala Harris is talking to the progressives because I think she's right. If the report's true, somebody's going to get that vote. It's a big part of the vote. And there's 2 paradoxes in this emerging Democratic field. One is almost everybody's an establishment candidate at a time when the anti-establishment wing is on the march. And number 2, there's a record number of Jewish Americans thinking of running for the Democratic nomination at a time when most of my sources say there's no way a Jewish American could be the Democratic nominee under the circumstances. Those 2 paradoxes, complexities, those 2 things are going to have to work their way out before we can understand this field.
Yeah, and there's a lot to break down there just with Josh Shapiro and Rahm Emanuel and how they've handled some of the questions from the ascendant kind of DSA wing
but it's also
Israel.
Pritzker, Ossoff, Slotkin, and then Bernie, who, although is technically born Jewish, he's congressman, what's that congressman, the guy who lied all the time?
Santos, Jewish?
Jewish. Bernie's more Jewish than Jewish, although technically he is Jewish.
That's actually a good point to transition to Mitch McConnell before we do, though, because
he's the least Jewish person we know.
The least Jewish person we know, and also one of the oldest people in the Senate, Bernie Sanders as well.
The combined ages of Pete Buttigieg and AOC, you got your research machine there. I believe their combined ages is less than the age of Mitch McConnell or Bernie Sanders. Am I right?
Goodness.
Am I right about that? How old's AOC? She's 34
right
or something? Pete Buttigieg is about the same age? I don't know. They're youngsters.
Yeah, that sounds right to me. Well, for Bernie, just while we stay on this before transitioning to McConnell, that seems to me when you have this moment mean, he is a singularly beloved figure on the kind of grassroots populist left, and by the DSA folks. Like, he is one of the people that they basically all respect, at least unless you're on the like far fringes of their like red rabbits, whatever the hell they're doing at their meetings. But he's pretty much respected by absolutely everyone. On the other hand, the ascendant energy is partially because, as the Pod Save America guys said recently, of Biden crashing out, burning in that debate, saddling the party with Kamala Harris, and no attempt to do a real nomination process. And that seems to me like it would be really difficult for Bernie, even though he is kind of a singularly beloved figure.
You mean because he's old?
Because he's old.
So this is what I say about this. Every candidate's got a flaw, or more than one, right? There's only one person who might run who leads a movement. The rest of them would run campaigns. There's only one who leads a movement. There's only one, or maybe Harris would be like this too. There's only one who could raise all the money they needed. There's only one who has universal name ID. There's only one who's got the experience of running for president. And there's only one whose platform matches up exactly with a big chunk of the electorate. He's old. So what I've said is, and this is based on my reporting, talking to folks around him, he hires a doctor who's great on TV, and the doctor says, and Bernie say, we will be available. You ever interview Joe Biden's doctor? No. You ever view Donald Trump's doctor? No. This doctor would be available for briefings, interviews, bar mitzvahs, weddings, cruise ships, just always available. And they make a pledge. Bernie will get a checkup every month, and the results will be fully available. There's video. I wish if this were Joe Rogan, your team could just pull it and put it right up. There's video from like 2 months ago of him shooting baskets. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
I mean,
limber.
And Bernie's brother, who's older than he is, he's fully there too. So I'm not guaranteeing he'll run, but I'm just saying, nothing Josh Shapiro can do about being Jewish. Nothing Gavin Newsom can do about the amount of hair product in his hair. Bernie,
he could do about that.
I'm kidding, because I'm trying to be fun. Bernie could try to allay these fears by doing 3 campaign events a day, having his doctor be available, releasing his medical records. People have called me an idiot. People said I know nothing about politics when I say Bernie's going to run and be the nominee. But all I'm saying is everybody's got a flaw. I could see how Bernie could address his, and I believe, again, the last presidential elections, with the exception of Biden, Obama twice, Trump twice, they've been won by guys who lead movements. Movements beat campaigns every time.
Well, let's talk about Mitch McConnell, because I'm hoping, Mark, you can help us get to the bottom of some of his recent movements. Basically, where is he? Now, I want to put this tear sheet up on the screen. The Daily Beast has been sending, I don't know if you've noticed, the Daily Beast has been all over the story. They're doing like 10 stories a day on where Mitch McConnell is. Yeah. Clearly doing some traffic for them. They reported yesterday Mitch McConnell's staff have declined to answer basic questions about what work he is doing. 37 days after he was loaded into the back of an ambulance and vanished from public view, his staff, led by $226,000 a year longtime aide Terry Carmack, refused to even say if the senator had spoken to any of them in recent days. Now, Andy Beshear, actually just within the last few hours, governor of Kentucky, rumored potential Democratic candidate. I think he would be a competitive Democratic primary candidate in the 2028 election. He said, quote, "We haven't received an email, a call, and Mitch McConnell works for the people of Kentucky." Again, that's just within the last few hours. The story is even more bizarre because he said recently he got calls where people had suggested to him that McConnell had actually passed. A local columnist is now apologizing. I don't know if you saw this. Girth is apologizing for having said something to the effect of, Mitch McConnell may have passed already in a recent column. Josh Hawley has been slamming Mitch McConnell, who has now missed, I think, 30 of the 30 roll call votes since he's been gone. What's going on?
Based on everything I know from talking to folks, I think what's going on is an old man who had a medical episode who is private about his health and doesn't want people to see him infirm. So I don't think he's dead. I don't think he's in a coma. I don't think he's never coming back. But at his age, any medical episode is a serious thing. So maybe not, but I don't think he's dead or in a coma based on what I know.
You think that picture was genuine Like, I mean, everything, it's gone through AI analyses. Everything seems to indicate that picture was genuine so far with him and Elaine Chao in the hospital bed.
Emily, I believe in three things: God, country, and metadata. The metadata suggests that thing is totally real. So yeah.
Pass the test.
Yeah.
Well, you can speak to this because you know the machinations of the Senate, but I think what a lot of people miss in this story is that when McConnell stepped down from the majority leader post and gave it to John Thune, he stayed on the committees he wanted to stay on. He's basically in charge of the committee that does defense appropriations. We're in the middle of a war. There's obviously still Russia-Ukraine raging in the background of the Iran conflict, and people are starting to get very frustrated. Josh Hawley is a good example. Josh Hawley coming out and saying he needs to explain what's going on here. This is actually kind of a serious impediment with the passing of Lindsey Graham for Republicans going forward. Will the frustrations boil over further?
Amongst the leadership who replaced him, there's a lot of affection and respect for him. I believe, again, this is not hard reporting. Like, Mitch McConnell didn't tell me this himself. But knowing him a little bit and knowing a lot of people around him, he just doesn't want his career to end this way. You know, his term is up in November, or in January, rather. He just doesn't want it to end this way. He doesn't want his final days as a senator, after the storied career he's had, to end in a hospital bed or in a rehab center. So I think he's not inclined to resign or give up his committee posts or anything except to fight his way back. And like I said, I believe he will be back. I don't know when, but I believe he'll be back. I think. Not sure, but I think.
Before we take a quick break, last question. Andy Bashir, potentially exploring a presidential bid, now is getting pressure from the left to do something about it, which he can't really do. What he's clearly doing politically is getting himself in front of the cameras and trying to pressure Mitch McConnell. What do you see it coming from Bashir should this go on for a number of weeks into the future? Oh,
it's just a stunt. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's play acting in order to get attention, I think. I mean, there is as long as his office continues to do constituent service, hey, I got a raccoon in my pothole or whatever. Emily, that's my best line of the night. No reaction. Raccoon in my pothole. Then he's doing his job. I mean, he's paid his dues. And he didn't want his career to end this way. He's not super popular with the base. He's not super popular with Democrats. But the Senate leaders like him and respect him and want to give him time. And for a lot of them, even the younger ones, there's a fair amount of there. But for the grace of God, go I.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back with more Mark Halperin in 1 moment. Summer is officially in full swing, and if you're looking to upgrade your warm weather routines, Cozy Earth has you covered. I've completely refreshed my home with their incredible products, and the difference is night and day. Their bamboo sheet set, which, by the way, I have been using for years and I absolutely love, is buttery soft and temperature regulating, completely redefining a hot summer's night, which we have had plenty of in the last couple of weeks. But they also just introduced their brand new resort beach towels. They're so cool. They're perfect for the pool, perfect for the beach. They're ultra plush, highly absorbent, and designed to actually pack light without taking over your bag, which I love. Cozy Earth stands behind everything they make, a lifetime warranty and 30 days of hassle-free return. This month, their bamboo sheets and new resort beach towels are the standout essentials worth checking out for elevated everyday luxury. Summer lives here, and honestly, so does cooling comfort. Head to CozyEarth.com and use my code Emily for an exclusive 20% off. That's code Emily for an exclusive 20% off. And if you see a post-purchase survey, mention that you heard about Cozy Earth right here. We're back now with Mark Halperin. Of course, check out Two-Way and Next Up. And I want to discuss this concession, dare I say, from Democratic Governor of New Jersey, Mikey Sherrill, who announced on Tuesday, I'm reading from the Washington Examiner here, that her administration removed about 6,600 residents who identified as non-citizens from New Jersey's voter rolls after the non-citizen residents were added due to a software error. She said, last week I learned that a serious software error in our motor vehicle system led to the registration of roughly 6,600 people who indicated they were not U.S. citizens between June 2023 and June 2024, almost 3 years prior to my taking office. She said fewer than 400 individuals who were newly registered for the first time because of the error voted. And she said they were registered as Democrats, Republicans, and unaffiliated voters, and were scattered across the state. This was discussed, again, we're about a week from Donald Trump's big primetime address on voter integrity or election integrity that had some, let's say, highs and lows, to put it charitably. But this got discussed on CNN. I want to roll some of this exchange between Abby Phillip and Scott Jennings. Get your reaction, Mark.
They might have cast a ballot because they just weren't aware that they were incorrectly put on the voter roll.
They weren't aware that they weren't a citizen of the United States?
No,
they said in this instance that they weren't citizens. They were still birth
Is this accurately described as fraud when none of these people tried to register to vote?
Yes, they cast ballots. 400 of them cast ballots. They had to actively go do that. I assume no one voted in their name. Maybe they did. I don't know. But they actively cast a ballot. Did they not?
What I want to, but
an illegal alien gets put on the rolls, however they got there, and cast a ballot.
I mean, but you acknowledge that some people might actually be confused, because this has come up in courts before, where some people who are ineligible to vote are not aware that they're ineligible to vote.
Okay, Mark, Abby Phillip there, at least my interpretation, is not merely playing devil's advocate, moderator of the roundtable. She seemed to pretty clearly be opposed to calling that fraud, and I'll see if you disagree with me on that. But I think that she just really does not want to give Trump a win. There are plenty of L's you could hand out to Trump after that primetime speech last week. But looks like he identified something real in New Jersey, 400 non-citizens voting. And it seems to me like the resistance or the eagerness to play the semantics battle there is partially just that unwillingness to admit Trump might have been right about something.
I'm sorry, I couldn't listen to a thing. All I could think about was the facial hair on Scott.
I know, it's jarring.
The caterpillar under his lip. I wanted to reach out to the screen and pet it. I still don't understand these legacy news organizations that put people in positions that are supposed to be unbiased, who are just doctrinaire liberals. I find it so strange. The lady who does the marquee podcast interviews for the New York Times,
Lula.
It seems like a nice lady, but she's not some objective journalist. She's a liberal partisan, and it's the same thing here. I just if you want to host a show on a channel that's I think that one of the N's in CNN stands for news. I might be wrong, but I think it does. It's just baffling to me. I don't know what to make of that, but I don't think we should be looking for explanations to justify people voting illegally. I think there should be a little bit more of an investigative and disapproving posture towards it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I'm curious if your read is also just that it stems from, I don't know, is it Trump particularly? Is it the fact that Trump put his stamp on it? I probably at this point, any concerns about election integrity would come with the stench of Trumpism. And so even if it's not a Trump initiative directly, they probably wouldn't want to talk about it. I don't know. It seems like that's where it's coming from.
Look, the left does not have a monopoly on that. When Barack Obama was president, if Barack Obama, the Affordable Care Act is based on a Heritage Foundation plan, and the right said it was from Satan. So it's not a monopoly, but there's no doubt that if Donald Trump's for it, they're against it.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's talk about the Smithsonian hearing that happened in the House of Representatives yesterday. Jasmine Crockett obviously doesn't seem to be giving up on her political future. She is still leaning very hard into picking media-friendly or clip-friendly battles in the House, despite losing that big Texas primary to James Tallarico earlier. So we covered here on this show. I went through the entire report on air, the Smithsonian report, the whole damn thing on air. It was probably so boring and not very fun, Mark, to some
That was
people
my
in the
thought,
audience.
Emily. That was my thought, Emily. It's like polling data, museums, reports.
I know, but it was worth it because that report was absolutely wild, unbelievable to the ears of somebody who, if you were explaining this to them from the Smithsonian Museum, National Museum of American History in 1985, people can go watch the full breakdown that we did. But Jasmine Crockett used the hearing as an opportunity to make statements like this one, S5.
Welcome to the Republicans' White Pride rally disguised as a congressional hearing. It might be uncomfortable for some people on this committee to hear about the true history of America, and I hate that for them, but facts are facts. And it's a fact that there is a violent, exclusionary, discriminatory, sexist, and racist part of American history. And a lot of this wasn't that long ago. And so attacks on the Smithsonian or any other institution that's willing to tell the true history of America is not only an attempt to rewrite history, it's an attempt to erase history. Where do Americans go to learn about the complicated, sometimes racist and violent parts of American history?
They have to keep going to public schools. They have to keep going to the public libraries. They have to keep going to the great Smithsonian. Look, the purpose of history is to enlighten us, inspire us, trouble us, bother us, sometimes make us angry. Americans have to keep going to those places they trust. We have to keep those institutions trustworthy.
So just to be clear, the Smithsonian National Museum of American History put out a talking sheet that's really common on college campuses, like almost word for word from what you see in a lot of college campuses, that was in the report. Aspects and assumptions of whiteness and white culture in the United States, rugged individualism, family structure, emphasis on scientific method, and the Protestant work ethic, in addition to some just egregious, openly anti-immigration restrictionism that was implemented at the National Museum of American History, very partisan stuff. And then on top of that, some, like, I don't even want to go back into the whole chest binder BDSM stuff, Mark, but that was in there too, just for good measure. And I mean, it seems like in the report, they're also saying they're criticizing the Smithsonian for not doing exactly what Jasmine Crockett just wanted them to do, which was to provide the whole complicated picture. They're saying if you mention Alexander Hamilton's bad record on slavery, also mention his abolitionist record on slavery. There are complexities. Why not do both? But this was Jasmine Crockett's moment, I guess, to inject herself back into the narrative. She's been trying to call her primary racist, all that sorts of stuff.
I call it Crockett and Flubs. You get that joke, Emily?
That's so bad, Mark.
Get that joke? Crockett and Flubs. You know, I congressional hearings make me want to switch to some sort of dictatorship. I just find it also, I find them so depressing. I find them so, the theatrics of them to just make me want to gnaw a piece of balsa wood.
That's fair. Well, let's take a listen then to Brandon Gill, rising star on the right. Let's see if this makes you want to.
He's also handsome as all get out, by the way.
Well, there you go. Maybe you can compare him and Scott Jennings when we roll this clip. Take a listen to Republican of Texas, Brandon Gill.
Is it important to be polite?
Excuse me, sir?
Is it important to be polite?
Yes, sir.
It's also interesting because the same mass action toolkit that your organization has been promoting references politeness as a defining characteristic of white supremacy culture. Ma'am, are you a white supremacist?
No, sir.
You're not. Can you help me square why your organization says that being polite is part of being a white supremacist?
All white supremacists are polite, but not all white people are white supremacists.
Familiar with that passage of the Mass Action Toolkit, which is not.
I can show you the passage. It's right here.
I don't. Pardon me?
I said I just read you the passage from it.
So she's not saying they didn't develop the passage. I gotta say, Mark, Republicans, Democrats, they do often make me want to gnaw on balsa wood as well, but he's doing a good, this is one of many clips of the last year or so. If he's trying to, if he's trying to, make his star rise on the right, he's pretty deft.
Yeah, he's got Twitter game too, a lovely family, and he's proof positive that you can be purdy and brainy at the same time.
There you go. I don't know why Jasmine Crockett wants to put herself front and center. Do you think she wants a political future beyond the end of her term in the House of Representatives?
She will want that, Emily, as long as you want to eat and breathe.
Noted. Mark Halperin, thank you so much for stopping by tonight.
Thank you. Delighted to be here. I'm going to go gnaw on some balsa wood. See you soon.
There you go. See you, Mark. Appreciate it. On some balsa wood. All right. We still have a lot to go here on tonight's edition of After Party. Going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with not Megan Rapinoe here, but a segment about Megan Rapinoe. I was going to say we'll be right back with Megan Rapinoe, but that would be deeply misleading, and you wouldn't believe me, and it would damage, of course, my trust with you, the viewer, the listener. We'll be right back. Well, summer is here, and if you want to actually feel confident, maybe feel less bloated and feel more energized this summer, but not just look like it on the outside, really feel like it, that starts with your gut. You might think being bloated every day is just normal. It's not. Once you fix your gut, everything changes, your digestion, your skin, your hair, and the one thing that can make the biggest difference is cowboy colostrum. If you start taking it for gut health, you might find the unexpected benefits surprise you most. Cowboy also ran a clinical study showing 83% of participants reported improved gut health, 79% experienced less bloating and inflammation, 72% saw improved digestion, and 62% reported fuller, thicker hair. Now, it's made in America from American grass-fed cows using true first-day whole colostrum with no fillers or artificial flavors. And they have a new cookies and cream flavor, which tastes like a nostalgic milkshake, making it an easy daily habit that supports your gut while helping you look and feel your best. So for a limited time, our listeners get up to 25% off their entire order. Just head to cowboycolostrum.com/afterparty and use code afterparty at checkout. That's 25% off when you use code afterparty at cowboycolostrum.com/afterparty. All right, let's talk about Megan Rapinoe and Sophie Cunningham and women's sports more broadly. Rapinoe stopped by, she has a new podcast with Vox that she's plugging these media appearances, but she stopped by, where else? The View yesterday to talk a little bit about women's sports. Let's listen in.
First it was like, well, nobody likes women's sports and nobody wants to watch it. Or there was, abuse happening and nobody seemed to care. Now, all of a sudden, we're going to use a vulnerable group of people in the trans community to be like, oh, well, we're just protecting women's sports and we care so much about it. And they're using this as a wedge issue because we love sports and, we don't want our little girls to be unsafe in sports. And it's like, unsafe from who? But okay. Yeah. When really what we're attacking women, we're saying, if you look like this as a woman, you can play. If you look like this as a woman, there's a bill in Washington happening right now that's going to require all girls, just like full stop, to go through a sex test, an invasive, examining their genitals to see if they're a woman. Yeah. We know what that means. Black girls are going to get questioned more, and they're going to get questioned first. Who's doing the examination?
Also, who wants to subject themselves to that?
And so they're going to see a pullback. They don't like women in sports because it helps us with confidence and power, and we see so many women in the C-suite played elite level sports. It's just great for you physically and all of it, but it's an attack on women in society.
Just a baseless smear of many of the people who oppose males playing in women's sports, saying that they are sexist, they want to attack women. Also, by the way, the only reason anybody is doing those tests is because people like Megan Rapinoe. I don't like those tests either. I don't think anybody is happy that now you have to run these tests. And maybe you don't, because the only people who are pushing us to the brink of needing to run tests like that for sports is because the people like Megan Rapinoe decided that a tiny, tiny minority, to borrow her words, could tyrannize, even as people who in that tiny, tiny minority are suffering enormously. You don't have to dismiss the suffering of many people with gender dysphoria, especially many young people with gender dysphoria, very, very real, very awful, that they then tyrannize women's sports. Also, women's shelters, women's prisons, women's locker rooms. Megan Rapinoe would have women who had been abused by men sleeping in a women's shelter in Alaska. This is a real case. I'm sure she would support the biological men, the men, staying in that women's shelter with the women who have been abused by men, sleeping alongside them, often mentally ill men. It is perfectly obvious to say. This is because of Megan Rapinoe's policies. The testing regime that she so detests wouldn't have to exist. In fact, it never did exist until we had to do this, because there was an ideological push to say men should play women's sports. By the way, many of the people, Martina Navratilova included, who have been part of the movement to protect women's sports are great champions of women's sports. I mean, let's talk about Sophie Cunningham here. One of the top-selling jerseys in the WNBA. Sophie Cunningham became, I believe, the first major current pro-female athlete. We can put this Clay Travis post up on the screen. Yeah, he said Sophie Cunningham just became one of the first current American female pro athletes to come out against men playing in women's sports in an ESPN profile article. Good for her. Rock star, many others should follow. She's the anti-Megan Rapinoe. And I'm going to read from the ESPN article here because Cunningham, as you might expect, is coming under criticism from people in elite media spaces, treating her a little bit as you see in this ESPN article. Again, I'm quoting from it. You say she's a MAGA Barbie, as some corners of the internet have taken to calling her. Projection, she says, because of what she looks like and where she's from. She'll weigh in on how to protect women's sports, she says, that's in quotes, because she's in the world and feels qualified to speak to that world. Quote, I get a lot of negative feedback about me hating trans, and I'm like, I never once said that, she says. I think that I am here to extend love, but I also think that with that love is truth, being honest, and I want to protect young girls in a locker room or young girls in sport who shouldn't have to go against biological men. Megan Rapinoe can take her protect from who line to Peyton McNabb. Try that out on Peyton McNabb, Megan Rapinoe. Tried that out on many of the girls who have been involved in these dangerous situations. Tell that to people who are losing battles. It's funny that the Sophie Cunningham article came out because I was just with the great Jennifer Say of XXXY Athletics, who's been such a leader on this, a couple of weeks ago. And she was talking about how not one current pro female athlete in the States has been brave enough to come and speak out against this yet. And here we have Sophie Cunningham doing it really simply, by the way. And Sophie Cunningham, just tonight, this is within, I think this came out around 8 p.m. Eastern time, another Clay Travis post that I'm going to read from here. Actually, I could probably pop it up on the screen. He notes, yeah, here we go. Sophie Cunningham, let me put this up. If you ever listen to this and don't watch, it's really cool. I get to control the screen sometimes, which I love doing. And that's what I'm getting at right now. So Sophie Cunningham, according to Clay, gets grilled by WNBA reporters for saying men shouldn't be able to play women's sports, refuses to back down. Quote, I said what I said. I said what I said. Sophie Cunningham, well done. May many more follow and take us out of the darkness of this ridiculous era that has needlessly endangered girls and women, that has needlessly divided the country, and that has needlessly hurt the very girls that it's intended to protect, the people who are suffering from very real gender dysphoria, or the people who got caught up in the social contagion that Abigail Shrier documented very persuasively, and we have more data coming out on that seemingly every month, confirming the Shrier thesis about social contagion sweeping in all kinds of people who will never get those years of their lives back. So well done, Sophie Cunningham. Now, ideologue. All right. That's going to do it for us tonight's edition of After Party. Thanks so much for tuning in, everyone. As a reminder, if you're not subscribed on the podcast feed, we do 3 episodes a week. You won't see it unless you're on the podcast feed. Emily@doublemccarrotmedia.com is where you can email me for happy hour to get your question included. I usually tape Thursday afternoon, so if you want to get it in before then, it'll be in this week's happy hour. If not, it'll go into next week's basket. Thanks so much, everyone. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube. That really is the best way to help the show, help us keep doing our independent journalism. Here on After Party, we'll be back soon with more.